Liam had always been a trusting husband. From the moment he met Venessa, he'd been enchanted by her energy, her boldness, and her unrestrained spirit. She was the kind of person who lit up a room the second she entered, all eyes inevitably drawn to her. Her wild nature didn't worry him. In fact, he'd always found it refreshing. He was steady and level-headed, while she was vibrant and unpredictable. Their personalities complemented each other, at least that's what he thought. They'd been married for 3 years, and during that time, Liam never saw a reason to doubt her. Venessa went out often, usually with her friends, and he always encouraged her to enjoy herself. She'd come home late, maybe a little tipsy, but she'd cuddle up next to him, and he'd think nothing of it. His life was busy, too, with long hours managing his own business, so he appreciated that she had her social circle to keep her happy. He'd heard the advice from others to keep an eye on a wife as social as Venessa, but he dismissed it, confident that love and trust were stronger than rumors. This Friday night was no different at first. Venessa had been getting ready since late afternoon, picking out a tight black dress he'd never seen before. When he walked into the bedroom to kiss her goodbye, she was standing in front of the mirror, applying bright red lipstick that seemed just a touch too intense for his taste. But he didn't say anything. "You look great, babe," he said, smiling as he leaned in to kiss her cheek. "Thanks," she replied, her eyes lighting up. "The girls and I are heading to that new club, Velvet Lounge. It's supposed to be amazing. I'll try not to wake you up when I get in." He chuckled. "Wake me up if you need help getting in the door." They both laughed, and he brushed it off as just another night out. After she left, Liam relaxed on the couch with a beer, scrolling through emails. He hardly gave her absence a second thought, knowing she'd come home whenever the party wound down. Yet, a small feeling of unease settled in the back of his mind. A flicker of doubt he quickly ignored. Venessa had always come back before. Tonight would be no different. Venessa strutted into Velvet Lounge with her friends, her high heels clicking against the polished floors as she tossed her hair over her shoulder. The music pulsed through the crowded club, neon lights flashing in sync with the bass. The energy in the room was electric, and Venessa, already 2 drinks in from pre-gaming at a friend's place, felt like she was floating. Her friends, Sarah and Jess, were just as eager for a night of freedom. They hadn't had a proper girls' night out in ages, and this was exactly the escape they needed. Venessa knew she had pushed things with Liam before, staying out late and coming home a little too buzzed, but he'd always trusted her. She liked that about him. He was the safe one. In contrast, she was the wild card, the one who craved a little chaos now and then. Tonight, though, felt different. A potent mix of excitement and rebellion brewed inside her. When they ordered their first round of drinks, she barely tasted the vodka, the alcohol hitting her bloodstream fast, bringing her to a comfortable, uninhibited haze. At the bar, her eyes caught a man watching her. He was tall, with a sharp jawline and an air of confidence that immediately piqued her interest. His dark hair was slicked back, and his shirt was just tight enough to reveal an athletic build underneath. He looked like trouble in all the right ways. Her friends noticed her gaze and exchanged knowing looks. "Venessa, are you checking him out?" Sarah smirked, nudging her. "Maybe," Venessa replied, her eyes never leaving him. Jess laughed, raising her glass. "It's not a crime to look. And besides, we're here to have fun, right?" The man noticed Venessa looking and offered a small, enticing smile. Vanessa's heart raced as she realized he was coming over, his steps purposeful and confident. Her friends giggled and scattered toward the dance floor, leaving her alone at the bar. It was as if they could sense something was about to happen. "Can I buy you a drink?" the man asked, his voice smooth and inviting. Up close, he was even more handsome, with piercing green eyes that held hers longer than they should have. "Why not?" Venessa replied, flashing him a grin. Her stomach twisted with a mix of excitement and a hint of guilt, but she brushed it off. It was harmless fun, right? Just a drink with a stranger in a crowded club. As they drank, the man introduced himself as Dean. Their conversation started light. Small talk about music, the atmosphere of the club, but quickly grew more intimate. Dean's hand found its way to her lower back, his touch firm but gentle, sending shivers up her spine. She felt a thrill she hadn't experienced in years, and as they laughed and drank, she forgot everything else. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she knew she was crossing a line, but the drinks were making her bold, her thoughts hazy. When Dean suggested moving to the VIP lounge for more privacy, she didn't hesitate. She wanted more of this feeling, this exhilarating rush that seemed to drown out any sense of responsibility. As they made their way to the VIP section, Dean took her hand, guiding her through the crowd. She noticed the curious glances of others, some looking on in judgment, others in envy, but she didn't care. This was her night and she was going to enjoy it. In the dimly lit VIP lounge, the atmosphere was quieter, more intimate, but still buzzing with that reckless energy. Dean led Venessa to a plush leather couch in the corner, where they could sit close and talk without the roar of the club drowning them out. The champagne flowed freely, and they clinked glasses, the bubbles tickling Venessa's nose as she took another sip, feeling her inhibitions fade almost completely. "You know, you're the most interesting person I've met in a while," Dean murmured, leaning in closer, his eyes glinting with intrigue. He had a way of making her feel like she was the only person in the room, as if everything else faded away when he looked at her. Venessa smiled, letting her hand linger on his arm. "You don't seem too boring yourself, Dean." Her words slurred slightly, but she didn't care. She felt alive in a way that was almost addictive, like every nerve ending in her body was sparking at once. He chuckled, his fingers tracing a lazy circle on her knee. "So, tell me, what's a gorgeous woman like you doing here all by herself?" There was a subtle glint in his eyes, a hint that he knew she was far from alone. But the look he gave her suggested he didn't care. Venessa hesitated, a flicker of Liam's face flashing in her mind. But Dean's hand moved to her thigh, and the thought disappeared as quickly as it had come. "Let's just say I needed a night to myself," she replied coyly. "No obligations, no strings." Dean raised his eyebrow, an amused smile playing on his lips. "I like the sound of that." He leaned in, their faces just inches apart. She could smell his cologne, a rich, spicy scent that filled her senses and made her head spin even more. His hand tightened on her leg, a clear signal, and Venessa's heart raced in anticipation. The whole world around them seemed to blur as she found herself inching closer, almost involuntarily. Without another thought, she closed the gap between them, their lips crashing together in a heated kiss. Dean's hands moved up her waist, pulling her closer as they lost themselves in the moment, oblivious to the crowd around them. For the first time in years, Venessa felt completely free, unbound by the life she'd left waiting for her at home. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Dean looked at her with a mischievous grin. "Why don't we take this somewhere a little more private?" he whispered, his voice low and rough. His hand was already pulling her gently toward a side door, a hidden area in the club known for its exclusive booths with doors that locked. Venessa hesitated for a split second, her mind flickering back to her life with Liam, to the years they'd shared and the trust he'd always given her without question. But something about the thrill of the unknown, the intoxication of the night, made her push those thoughts aside. Before she knew it, they were in a secluded booth, away from prying eyes. Dean closed the door behind them, his gaze never leaving hers. The air was thick with tension, and Venessa felt a thrill she hadn't felt in years. It was reckless, even dangerous, and that made it all the more exhilarating. As their encounter continued, Venessa's mind grew clouded, lost in the heat of the moment. Every kiss, every touch felt like a spark, igniting something within her she hadn't even realized was there. The guilt that lingered in the back of her mind was no match for the wild excitement she was feeling now. Time blurred in the dim booth, and by the time she stumbled out, fixing her dress and smoothing her hair, she barely knew where she was. The night was a haze of champagne, laughter, and fleeting moments, and she didn't even glance back at Dean as she rejoined the main area of the club. Venessa knew she should feel something more. Guilt, remorse, maybe even fear, but all she felt was a rush of satisfaction. Outside, the city lights twinkled as she called a cab, not even checking her phone to see if Liam had messaged her. She leaned back in the seat, a lazy smile on her face as she let the night's events wash over her. This was her secret, one she planned to keep buried, away from the comfortable life she shared with her husband. Liam was an early riser. Saturday mornings were his favorite, quiet and slow, a chance to recharge after a busy week. But this morning, Venessa's side of the bed was empty. Her phone was on the nightstand, vibrating periodically as notifications piled up. Frowning, he glanced at the clock. It was nearly 9 a.m., and she still wasn't back. It wasn't until a little past 10 that he heard the front door creak open. Venessa stumbled in, her hair a tangled mess and her makeup smudged. She was holding her heels in one hand and her clutch in the other, her steps wobbly as she kicked off her shoes by the door. Her eyes were glazed, her expression a blend of exhaustion and something Liam couldn't quite place. Something darker. "Had a good time?" he asked, forcing a casual smile as she walked past him. She shot him a half-hearted grin, clearly still under the effects of last night's escapades. "Too good," she slurred, collapsing onto the couch without even looking at him. "Sorry. Got a little carried away." Liam raised an eyebrow but didn't push it. He was used to her partying hard, but something about her demeanor this morning felt off. He couldn't put his finger on it, so he just let it slide, deciding to give her space to recover. By the time noon rolled around, Liam was busy with a project in the garage when his phone rang. It was his friend Mike, a reliable guy he'd known since college. They'd gone through thick and thin together, and he was the kind of friend who'd never call unless he had something important to say. "Hey Mike, what's up?" Liam asked, leaning against the workbench. "Hey man." Mike's voice sounded hesitant, almost awkward. "Listen, I wasn't sure if I should tell you this, but I thought you should know. I saw Venessa last night at Velvet Lounge." Liam felt a pit form in his stomach, but he kept his tone steady. "Yeah, she was out with her friends. No big deal, right?" There was a pause on the other end, and then Mike continued. "Well, that's the thing. I saw her drinking with some guy at the bar, and, let's just say they were getting pretty close." Liam's heart started pounding. "Close? What do you mean, Mike?" "They were all over each other, man," Mike said quietly. "Holding hands, laughing, the kind of thing you do when you're into someone." They left the bar together and headed to the VIP area. A cold wave of shock washed over Liam. He forced himself to stay calm, his mind racing. "Are you sure it was her?" "Positive. She was wearing this tight black dress, right? I remember because she looked, well, let's just say she looked like she was out to have a good time." Liam's grip tightened on the phone, his knuckles white. Mike's words echoed in his mind, each one stabbing deeper than the last. He barely managed to keep his voice steady. "Thanks for telling me, Mike. I appreciate it." After hanging up, Liam leaned against the workbench, his mind a whirlwind of disbelief and betrayal. Venessa hadn't mentioned anything about last night other than a casual "too good" as she crashed on the couch. Now he was left piecing together what she'd done, and the thought made his stomach turn. When he went back inside, Venessa was still sprawled on the couch, sipping a glass of water and scrolling through her phone. For a second, he just stood there, staring at her, trying to make sense of the woman he thought he knew. "Venessa," he said, his voice sharper than he intended. She looked up, surprised. "Yeah. Did you have a good night?" he asked, forcing a casual tone, though his stomach churned with tension. She shrugged, flashing him a lazy grin. "Yeah, it was fun. Just a girls' night. Nothing special." Liam felt a surge of anger rise, but he kept his expression neutral. "Nothing special, huh? So, when did the girls leave?" She hesitated, her eyes narrowing slightly. I don't know. I was pretty drunk." "Really?" he pressed, his voice hardening. "Because Mike called me this morning. He said he saw you with someone. Some guy at the bar." Vanessa's face fell, her expression shifting from casual to defensive in an instant. She sat up straighter, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Oh, come on, Liam. You know how it is. A few drinks, some random guy starts flirting. It's harmless. Nothing happened." But Liam didn't buy it. He knew when Venessa was lying. She had a tell, a slight twitch in her left eye, and right now that tell was glaringly obvious. "Nothing happened?" he repeated, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Then why did you go to the VIP lounge with him?" Vanessa's face flushed, and she rolled her eyes. "You're overreacting, Liam. It was just a little fun. I mean, are you seriously going to make a big deal out of this?" Her words struck him like a slap. Here she was, sitting in front of him, deflecting and dismissing the whole situation as if it were nothing. He felt a deep, seething anger rise within him, but he knew he needed to stay calm. He had to figure out exactly what had happened, no matter how painful it might be. Liam took a deep breath, trying to keep his composure, though every word Venessa had just said felt like another cut, each one deepening the wound. He had always trusted her, never questioned her nights out, never checked her phone. But now, as she sat there, dismissing his concerns with that brazen smirk, he realized he couldn't ignore this. "Venessa," he began slowly, fighting to keep his voice steady, "I need you to be honest with me. Did anything happen last night that I should know about?" She sighed, rolling her eyes as if he were asking the most ridiculous question. "Liam, for God's sake, you're really going to make a big deal out of this? I told you it was just a few drinks, some harmless flirting. Nothing serious." "Harmless flirting?" Liam repeated, anger simmering in his voice. "Then why did Mike see you holding hands with this guy? Why did he see you go into the VIP lounge with him?" Vanessa's jaw tightened, her expression shifting from dismissive to irritated. "Oh, so now you're going to believe Mike over me? I thought you trusted me, Liam. What's the big deal if I wanted to have a little fun?" Liam clenched his fists, struggling to keep his anger in check. "The big deal," he said through gritted teeth, "is that I trusted you. I thought we were on the same page. But now, after what I've heard, I don't even know who you are." She scoffed, crossing her arms. "Seriously, Liam? You're acting like I committed some horrible crime. I went out, I danced, I had a few drinks. And yeah, maybe I flirted with someone. But do you really think that's worth tearing everything apart over?" He took a step closer, his gaze fixed on hers. "It's not just the flirting, Venessa. It's the fact that you lied about it, tried to brush it off as nothing. And you don't even seem sorry." Venessa threw her hands up in frustration. "You want me to say I'm sorry? Fine, I'm sorry, okay? I got a little carried away. But maybe if you weren't always so boring, I wouldn't feel the need to go out and have a little fun once in a while." Liam felt his heart drop at her words, the sting of betrayal cutting deeper. "So now it's my fault?" he asked quietly, his voice laced with hurt. "You're blaming me because you couldn't control yourself for one night?" She shrugged, an unapologetic smirk on her face. "If you want to put it that way, sure. Maybe if you loosened up a bit, I wouldn't feel so restless. Maybe I wouldn't need to find excitement somewhere else." Her words hung in the air, heavy and brutal, leaving Liam momentarily speechless. He had always tried to be the supportive husband, giving her freedom, letting her be herself. But now it felt like every compromise he'd made was thrown back in his face. "So that's it then?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're not even going to deny it, are you? You're not going to try to make this right?" Venessa rolled her eyes again, a look of exasperation on her face. "Oh, stop being so dramatic, Liam. It was one night. One stupid night where I had a little fun. Why are you acting like this is the end of the world?" Liam's hands shook as he stared at her, realizing just how far apart they had grown. She wasn't the woman he thought she was, and suddenly, the life they had built together felt like a lie. "Venessa," he said quietly, his voice steady but filled with an icy resolve, "I want you to pack a bag and leave." She looked taken aback, a flicker of surprise crossing her face before it hardened into defiance. "You're really kicking me out? Over this? Wow, Liam. I didn't think you had it in you." He held her gaze unflinching. "Maybe I should have done it sooner." She laughed bitterly, standing up and grabbing her purse. "Fine, if that's what you want, then I'll go. But don't come crawling back to me later when you realize you can't handle being alone." With one last, scornful look. She turned and walked out the door, slamming it behind her. Liam stood there in silence, the echo of the door reverberating through the empty house. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, hurt, betrayal. But as the minutes ticked by, a strange sense of calm washed over him. He had finally taken a stand, finally put himself first. And though the future seemed uncertain, he knew one thing for sure: he wasn't going to let Venessa's betrayal define him. He was ready to rebuild, to find a new beginning on his own terms. The silence that filled the house after Venessa's departure was louder than any argument they'd had. For the first time in years, Liam felt the absence of her presence, and it was jarring. He moved from room to room, noticing traces of her everywhere. The faint scent of her perfume, the shoes left by the door, a stray earring on the bathroom counter. Each item felt like a remnant of a life he no longer recognized. Liam sank into the couch, his mind replaying the last few hours. He tried to make sense of her words, the brazen disregard for their marriage, the unapologetic way she dismissed his pain. In that moment, he felt a deep wave of anger and sadness wash over him. After a few hours of sitting in a daze, Liam finally reached for his phone. He scrolled through his contacts, hesitating before landing on his sister's name. He and his sister, Emily, had always been close, though he'd rarely burdened her with his troubles. But now he needed someone to talk to. The phone rang twice before Emily picked up, her voice bright and cheerful. "Hey, Liam. What's up?" Liam took a deep breath, his voice coming out rougher than he intended. "Hey, Em. I need to talk to you about something. Something serious." There was a pause on the other end, and then her tone shifted to one of concern. "Of course, Liam. What's going on? Are you okay?" Liam launched into the story, recounting the events of the previous night. The call from Mike, Venessa's casual dismissal, and their heated confrontation that morning. Emily listened in silence, occasionally interjecting with a soft, empathetic murmur. By the time he finished, Liam felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. "Oh, Liam." Emily's voice was filled with sympathy. "I can't believe she would treat you like that. I had my reservations about her, but I never thought she'd go this far." Liam sighed, leaning his head back against the couch. "I don't know what to do, Em. I feel like everything's crumbling. I never saw this coming. I trusted her." "Listen," she said, her voice firm. "You did everything you could. You were a great husband, Liam. This isn't your fault. Venessa made her choices, and now it's time for you to make yours. You deserve better than this." Her words hit him hard, and he felt the sting of tears welling up. He hadn't cried yet. Not when he confronted Venessa, not even when she walked out the door. But now, the floodgates opened, and he let the tears fall silently as he held the phone to his ear. After they finished talking, Liam sat alone, the weight of his emotions finally crashing down on him. The pain of betrayal was still fresh, but Emily's words had planted a seed of resilience in him. He wasn't alone. He had people who cared about him, who believed he deserved better. And for the first time since the ordeal began, he felt a glimmer of hope. The next morning, he decided to focus on rebuilding his routine. He spent the day cleaning the house, removing traces of Venessa's belongings, boxing up the things she had left behind. It was cathartic, a symbolic gesture of letting go of the past. In the afternoon, his phone buzzed. It was Mike. "Hey, Liam," Mike said, sounding hesitant. "I just wanted to check in on you. I know things have been rough, and I wanted to make sure you're okay." "Thanks, Mike," Liam replied, genuinely grateful. "It's been hard, but I think I'm starting to come to terms with it. I appreciate you telling me the truth. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't know." Mike sighed. "I hate to say it, but I thought Venessa was trouble from the beginning. I just didn't want to interfere in your marriage. But I had to tell you what I saw." "Don't blame yourself," Liam said, feeling a wave of gratitude for his friend's honesty. "I would have done the same, and honestly, knowing the truth has given me the clarity I need." They talked for a while, discussing everything from their shared college memories to plans for the future. By the end of the call, Liam felt a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just going to wallow in the pain of Vanessa's betrayal. He was going to rebuild, reclaim his life, and find happiness on his own terms. After his conversation with Mike, Liam felt a shift within himself. It was subtle but powerful, a realization that he had the strength to move on, no matter how painful it was. He decided to focus on himself for the first time in years, reclaiming the energy and time he had poured into his marriage with Venessa. Liam spent the next week adjusting to his new routine. He threw himself into his work, took long runs each morning to clear his mind, and began filling his evenings with projects he'd neglected over the years. He fixed up the backyard, repainted a few rooms in the house, and even started cooking for himself instead of relying on takeout. These small tasks kept his mind occupied and gave him a sense of accomplishment. But there were still reminders of Venessa everywhere. Liam could see them in the little things. The pair of wine glasses she'd insisted they buy, her favorite books on the shelf, her perfume still lingering faintly in the bedroom. It was hard to escape her completely, and some days were harder than others. On those days, the pain would hit him out of nowhere, like a wave crashing over him, reminding him of everything he'd lost. A few friends noticed his absence from social gatherings and reached out. Emily was a constant source of support, and even Mike visited a couple of times to hang out and watch the game with him. One evening, Emily encouraged Liam to join her and a few friends for dinner at a new restaurant downtown. Initially, Liam was hesitant. He wasn't ready to jump back into social events, not with the emotional weight he was still carrying. But Emily was persistent, saying it would do him good to be around people, to feel some sense of normalcy again. Finally, he agreed. When he arrived at the restaurant, he was surprised by the warm welcome. Emily had invited a few of their mutual friends, including people he hadn't seen in ages. They greeted him with open arms, asking about his life and showing genuine concern. For the first time since Venessa left, Liam felt a glimmer of happiness. He laughed, shared stories, and enjoyed the evening without the heavy cloud of betrayal hanging over him. As the night wore on, Liam realized how much he'd missed this. Being around people who genuinely cared, who lifted him up instead of tearing him down. He could feel himself coming back to life, bit by bit, in their presence. By the end of the evening, Emily pulled him aside, her expression serious. "Liam, I know you're going through a lot right now, but I want you to know that you're stronger than you think. Don't let what happened define you. You deserve to be happy, and you will be." Her words stuck with him, giving him the strength he needed to continue moving forward. That night, as he lay in bed, he made a decision. He wasn't just going to survive this, he was going to thrive. He would take this experience and let it make him stronger, wiser, more resilient. Over the next few weeks, Liam threw himself into his newfound independence. He started hitting the gym regularly, focusing on building his strength and clearing his mind. The physical exertion helped him release his frustrations, channeling his energy into something positive. His coworkers noticed the change, and even his boss complimented him on his renewed focus and productivity. But as much as he was improving, there were still questions gnawing at him, things left unresolved. He wanted answers from Venessa, closure for the painful experience she'd put him through. One evening, when he was feeling particularly unsettled, he texted her, asking to meet and have an honest conversation. The next morning, Venessa replied with a casual, "Sure, let's meet at that coffee shop we used to go to." When he arrived at the cafe, she was already there, looking as composed and unapologetic as ever. She greeted him with a smirk, her confidence unnerving him. She had that same dismissive air about her, as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just walked out on years of shared history without a second thought. "Liam," she said, sipping her coffee casually, "I'm surprised you wanted to meet. I figured you'd just want to move on and forget about me." Liam forced himself to stay calm, though her indifference was infuriating. "Venessa, I just want to understand why you did it, why you thought it was okay to betray me like that. Was I really that bad of a husband?" She laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Liam, it wasn't about you. I just needed excitement, something that made me feel alive. You were comfortable, predictable. I wanted something different. Her words stung, cutting deeper than any wound. He had always believed their life together was enough, that they had a solid, fulfilling relationship. But to her, it had been dull, a prison she needed to escape. You know, he said slowly, fighting to keep his voice steady, I would have done anything to make you happy. All you had to do was talk to me. Venessa shrugged, a hint of pity in her eyes. Maybe, but that's just not who I am, Liam. I need freedom, excitement. I don't want to be tied down. With that, she stood up, looking at him one last time. I hope you find someone who fits your life better. Goodbye, Liam. She walked away without a second glance, leaving Liam sitting there, feeling strangely lighter. He realized that her departure wasn't a loss but a release from a relationship that had never truly fulfilled her. As painful as it was, he knew he deserved better. Someone who would appreciate him and the life he wanted to build. When he left the cafe, he felt a renewed sense of clarity. He was ready to embrace this new chapter, knowing that he had faced the truth and was ready to move forward, stronger and wiser. Liam walked out of the cafe with a strange mix of relief and sadness. Venessa's words echoed in his mind, but instead of the bitterness that had once lingered, he felt a new sense of freedom. She had chosen her path, and now he was finally free to choose his. In the following weeks, Liam leaned into his new life. He realized he had put so much energy into trying to make his marriage work that he'd lost parts of himself in the process. Now, he was ready to rediscover those parts. He filled his days with work, workouts, and reconnecting with old friends. He rekindled friendships he hadn't given enough attention to over the years, people who welcomed him back with open arms. One of these friends was Adam, an old college buddy who was always up for an adventure. One evening, Adam called him up. Hey man, I know you're probably not into the whole party scene, but there's a live band at the pub downtown tonight. Let's go. Drinks on me. Liam hesitated. The idea of a night out, especially one that involved loud music and crowds, wasn't exactly appealing. But he decided to push himself. He knew he couldn't sit in his comfort zone forever. All right, I'm in. The pub was packed when they arrived, the atmosphere electric with live music and laughter. Adam bought him a drink, and they settled near the bar. For the first time in a while, Liam felt a genuine sense of excitement. He and Adam talked and laughed, reminiscing about college days, sharing stories, and catching up on lost time. As the night went on, Adam pointed toward a group of women laughing nearby. So, you think you're ready to get back in the game? He asked with a mischievous grin. Liam laughed, shaking his head. He wasn't sure he was ready for dating, but he enjoyed the light-hearted atmosphere and the reminder that life could be fun again. One woman from the group, a brunette named Claire, caught his eye. She had a warm smile, and they exchanged a friendly nod. Eventually, she made her way over and introduced herself. They struck up a conversation, and Liam found himself enjoying her company more than he'd expected. They laughed about the music, shared stories about their favorite travel spots, and bonded over their love for hiking. When he mentioned that he was rediscovering his independence, Claire offered him a knowing look. Been there, she said, smiling sympathetically. It's hard at first, but trust me, it gets better. You'll find yourself in ways you never expected. They spent hours talking, sharing stories and laughing together. Liam felt a genuine connection that he hadn't felt in a long time. As the night came to an end, Claire wrote her number on a napkin, handing it to him with a smile. In case you ever want to go hiking, she said with a playful wink. Liam walked home with a newfound sense of hope. He wasn't rushing into anything, but it felt good to connect with someone, even if just as a friend. For the first time since Venessa had left, he felt like he was moving forward, embracing life on his own terms. The next day, he called Emily to tell her about the night out, and she was thrilled. Liam, this is amazing. You deserve happiness, and I'm so proud of you for putting yourself out there. Over the next few weeks, Liam continued to build on this momentum. He started exploring new hobbies, from rock climbing to cooking classes. He and Claire went hiking a few times, and he even joined a book club recommended by Emily. He was piecing together a life he could be proud of, one filled with friends, growth, and new experiences. In the process, Liam discovered a strength within himself he hadn't known he possessed. He no longer looked at Venessa's betrayal as the end of his happiness, but as a turning point that had pushed him to rediscover himself. He'd learned to appreciate his own company, to find joy in the small things, and to cherish the people who truly supported him. One evening, as he sat in his newly redecorated living room, a realization washed over him. He was happy. Not the fleeting, temporary happiness that came from external validation, but a deep, steady contentment he'd built on his own. He knew he was ready to face the world with confidence and an open heart. Liam had come a long way in the weeks following his split from Venessa. He had created a new routine, one that was filled with activities that brought him joy and gave him a sense of independence. Yet, no matter how much he focused on moving forward, there was still a lingering anxiety in the back of his mind, a fear that Venessa would somehow find a way back into his life. It wasn't that he wanted her back. Far from it. But there were moments, fleeting, difficult moments, when he wondered if she ever truly regretted what she'd done. If she ever thought about the life they could have had, the future they had once dreamed of. Those were the moments when the past felt like it was still holding him hostage. It was one of those nights, when Liam was sitting on his couch after a long day of work, that he received an unexpected message. It was from Venessa. "Hey, can we talk? I know I've hurt you, but I think we should have an honest conversation about everything." Liam stared at his phone, the words staring back at him, like a taunt. He hadn't heard from her since their last meeting at the cafe, and he had no interest in revisiting the painful conversation. He could feel his pulse quicken, his breath catch in his throat. He wasn't sure why she was reaching out now, or what she thought they could possibly say to each other that would change anything. After a few minutes of pacing back and forth, he typed out a response. "What do you want, Venessa?" She replied quickly, "I just want closure, Liam. For both of us." Liam hesitated. It had been so long since he had heard from her, but he had done a lot of work to get to where he was now. Would meeting with her be a setback? Or was this an opportunity to finally lay everything to rest once and for all? He made up his mind quickly. "All right, tomorrow. Same cafe." The next afternoon, Liam found himself sitting at the same cafe where he had met Venessa weeks ago. The place hadn't changed much. He had almost expected that, in some way, their meeting would feel like a return to the past. But as he sat there, waiting for her, he felt strangely indifferent to it all. When Venessa walked in, his heart skipped a beat, but it wasn't out of longing or hope. It was just the shock of seeing her again after everything. She looked different somehow, her makeup heavier than before, her expression guarded. For a moment, Liam wondered if she was regretting what had happened between them. But then she smiled, and he could see the same distant, self-satisfied look in her eyes. "Hey," she said, sitting down across from him. "Thanks for agreeing to meet." Liam nodded, his gaze not meeting hers. "You said you wanted closure. So talk." Venessa raised an eyebrow. "Straight to the point, huh? That's different." Liam could feel the anger rising in him, but he kept it under control. "I don't need any games, Venessa. Just tell me what you want to say." She sighed, pushing her hair back behind her ear. "I know I messed up, Liam. I didn't appreciate you and I didn't value what we had. But the truth is, I miss you. I miss the life we had. And I regret how everything ended." Liam almost laughed. "Is this some kind of joke? You didn't miss me when you were out at that club, sleeping with God knows how many guys. You didn't miss me when you threw away everything we had for a night of fun." Vanessa's face hardened. "I didn't say I was proud of what I did, but I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted, and I made mistakes. That's all I'm asking for, to be able to admit it and move forward." Liam's chest tightened, the weight of her words pressing down on him. He had heard this all before, the apologies, the justifications. Nothing about this felt genuine. It felt like another attempt to make him feel sorry for her, and he refused to fall for it again. "Move forward," Liam said, his voice thick with emotion. "You can't just walk back into my life like nothing happened. You don't get to do that." Vanessa's expression faltered for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. I'm not asking for that. I just want us to be on the same page. Can't we at least be civil? For old time's sake. Liam leaned forward, his face hardening. Old times? Do you even hear yourself right now? After everything you did to me, you think we can just pretend like we're friends? You left me, Venessa. You walked away from everything. And now you want to sit here and act like I'm supposed to feel sorry for you. The silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Vanessa's eyes glistened, but Liam wasn't sure if it was guilt or something else. She reached into her bag, pulling out a small envelope and sliding it across the table to him. Take it, she said softly. Liam stared at the envelope for a moment before picking it up. He opened it slowly, his fingers trembling as he pulled out a photograph. It was a picture of the two of them from their wedding day, the moment when they had exchanged vows, promising to love each other forever. The photograph seemed like a distant memory, like something from another lifetime. I kept this, Venessa said, her voice quieter now. I've kept it all this time, and I know I can't undo what happened, but I wanted you to know that I regret it. All of it. Liam's heart sank as he looked at the photo. That day had meant everything to him, and now it felt like a cruel joke. He had built his entire life around that promise, and she had shattered it without a second thought. You don't get to do this, Liam said, his voice low and steady. You don't get to manipulate me into feeling bad for you. I've had enough of your lies. Venessa looked away, a flicker of emotion crossing her face. She didn't argue, didn't try to defend herself. Instead, she stood up and walked out without another word. Liam sat there for a long time, staring at the photograph. His hands shook, but he didn't let himself cry. He had come to this meeting for closure, but what he had gotten was a reminder of everything he had lost, and everything he had gained by walking away from her. As he stood up to leave, he made a promise to himself. He wouldn't let her have the power to hurt him anymore. He had moved on, and he was never going back. The air felt heavier as Liam left the cafe, Vanessa's absence somehow making the space feel colder, more empty. The photograph she'd left on the table still weighed on his mind, but he didn't let it linger long. He had spent so much time giving her power over his life, and he wasn't about to let that happen again. It was time to fully let go. He found himself walking aimlessly down the street, his mind racing with a mix of anger, sadness, and confusion. How had it come to this? How had he allowed himself to believe her lies again? He didn't have all the answers, but one thing was clear. He needed to get his life back on track, and he wasn't going to let her pull him back into the emotional abyss. As he walked, he pulled his phone out and called Emily. She had been his rock through all of this, the one person who never judged him, who always had his back. "Hey," she said cheerfully when she picked up. "How'd it go?" Liam took a deep breath, leaning against a nearby street lamp. "It didn't go how I thought it would," he said, his voice laced with frustration. I don't even know. She tried to make me feel sorry for her again. Emily, she gave me a picture from our wedding day, like that was going to change anything." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Liam," Emily said, her tone gentle but firm, "you don't owe her anything. She doesn't get to manipulate you like that. It's just another way for her to keep her hooks in you, to make you feel like you have to fix everything. You don't have to fix her. She made her choices." Liam nodded even though she couldn't see him. Her words rang true. Venessa had never truly taken responsibility for her actions. Instead, she had always deflected blame, turning everything back on him or the situation. He'd spent too long wondering if she was sorry, when in reality her apologies were as hollow as her promises. "I know," Liam said, his voice steady now, "but it still stings. That photo, our wedding day, it just reminded me of how much I thought we were in it together, how much I thought we were building something, and now it's just gone. It's all gone." There was another pause, but this time, it felt comforting, like a silent understanding. "You were building something, Liam, but you weren't the only one involved. She wasn't. You can't control someone else's choices. You only have control over yours. And now you've chosen to move forward. And that's something to be proud of." He felt a weight lift off his chest with her words. It wasn't a solution or a quick fix, but it was a step in the right direction. "So, what's next for you?" Emily asked, a playful edge to her voice. "You going to take up some new hobby? Do something spontaneous?" Liam smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. "Actually, yeah, I'm going to spend the weekend in the mountains. I need a change of scenery, and I've always wanted to go hiking." "That's the spirit," she said, clearly pleased. "Take some time for yourself. Maybe when you come back, we can talk more about what you want out of life now. No rush, but it's time to think about what you need, without anyone else's baggage." The weekend in the mountains felt like a cleansing breath. Liam had always loved the peace that nature brought, the quiet that allowed him to truly think. He didn't have to worry about anyone else's expectations, anyone else's demands. It was just him, the trees, the rocks, and the sky. He hiked alone for the most part, but it was the solitude that gave him clarity. As he sat at the peak of a small mountain, looking out over the valley below, he realized just how far he had come. He'd gone from a man broken by betrayal to someone who had started rebuilding, piece by piece, without relying on anyone's validation. The thought of moving on from Venessa no longer felt impossible. It felt liberating. He didn't need her approval or her apology to feel whole. He had found his strength in the absence of her presence, and that, he realized, was the ultimate form of healing. As he made his way back down the mountain, phone in hand, he sent a message to Claire. They had kept in touch after their hiking trip, exchanging texts here and there, but he hadn't really pursued anything further. He wasn't ready for a relationship, not yet. But he could tell Claire was different, a refreshing change from the toxic relationships he had been tangled in before. "Hey Claire, how's it going? I just got back from the mountains. It was amazing. I've been thinking about going on another hike sometime soon. Maybe we could make it a group thing. Just some friends, good conversation, and the outdoors." The message was simple, but as he hit send, he felt lighter. He wasn't making any big declarations or trying to rush into anything. It was just an invitation to enjoy life, to embrace the good things that were still out there waiting for him. The next day, Liam got a call from Adam. "Hey man, got any plans for tonight? There's a bar opening downtown. They've got this crazy band playing, and I thought we could check it out." Liam hesitated but found himself saying yes without much thought. "Sure, sounds good." As the evening came and the music played, Liam stood in the crowd, realizing just how far he'd come. He didn't need to be stuck in the past anymore. He could enjoy the present, the moment, and with Emily by his side, the laughter of friends filling the air, and the rush of the music around him, he couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, he was beginning to find a little bit of happiness again. Liam awoke the next morning with the sound of birds chirping outside his window and a soft light filtering through the blinds. He had a rare moment of peace as he stretched and sat up, feeling the weight of the past slowly lifting from his shoulders. There was a sense of freedom now, a clarity that had been absent for so long. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, breaking his reverie. It was a message from Claire, a short, simple text. "You free tonight? I've got a spot reserved for us at that new sushi place downtown. Thought we could catch up." Liam smiled. He hadn't expected Claire to reach out again so soon, but it was a welcome surprise. Over the past few weeks, they had kept in touch, exchanging messages, talking about life, and sharing small details. There was something about her presence, even in text, that felt comforting, different from what he had with Venessa. It was genuine, easy, and without the complications of the past. "Sounds great," he typed back. "What time?" 7 p.m. "I'll see you there." The day passed slowly, but with a purpose. Liam spent the afternoon running errands and taking care of a few things around the apartment, all while his thoughts drifted back to the message. Claire was different from the women he had known in the past. Different from Venessa in a way that made Liam feel like he was finally waking up from a bad dream. When 7 p.m. rolled around, Liam found himself standing outside the sushi restaurant, his nerves fluttering in his chest. He had put on a shirt he felt good in, made sure his hair was styled just right, and now, as he waited for Claire, he wondered if it was even possible to have a fresh start with someone after everything he'd been through. But deep down, he knew he was ready. He wasn't looking for something to fill the void Venessa had left. He was looking for something that could stand on its own. Claire arrived right on time, looking effortlessly chic in a black dress and a light leather jacket. Her presence was calming, her smile genuine. It was refreshing, a reminder that not everything in life had to be filled with drama and complications. "Hey," she said with a smile, walking up to him and giving him a warm hug. "You look good, Liam." Liam chuckled. "Thanks. You too." They made their way inside, where they were led to their table. The ambience of the restaurant was cozy, with soft lighting and the faint hum of conversation around them. As they sat down, Claire immediately took the lead in the conversation, asking Liam about his week and sharing some of the things that had been happening in her own life. It was easy to talk to her. No walls, no pretense, just two people getting to know each other. The night flew by as they shared laughs over sushi and exchanged stories about their pasts, their interests, and their dreams. Liam felt a sense of ease he hadn't realized he missed. Every word Claire spoke seemed to pull him further into the present, away from the past that had held him captive for so long. "So, what about you?" Claire asked, her tone more serious now. "What's your idea of moving forward? I know you've had a lot to deal with, but what do you want in the future?" Liam paused for a moment, his chopsticks resting against his plate. It was a question he hadn't really thought about in detail before, not since his life had been upended by Venessa's betrayal. But now, sitting across from Claire, he realized that maybe he did have an idea. "I want peace," he said quietly. "I want to feel like I'm building something real, something that's not going to fall apart because of someone else's choices. I've spent so long thinking about other people, trying to fix things that were never my responsibility. Now, I just want to focus on myself, on my future, and if that includes someone else, then so be it." Claire nodded, her expression soft. "I get that. Life is too short to keep carrying someone else's mistakes." Liam smiled. "Exactly." The next few weeks passed in a blur of new experiences. Liam continued to reconnect with old friends and make new ones. He took up running, started going to the gym, and even picked up his guitar again after months of neglect. He wasn't actively avoiding thoughts of Venessa, he was just living. He was becoming someone different, someone who wasn't defined by his past, but rather by the choices he was making today. But the past, as it always does, had a way of creeping back in. One afternoon, while Liam was picking up groceries, he received an unexpected call. It was from his mother. "Liam," she said, her voice tense, "I need to talk to you about something important. It's about Venessa." Liam felt a knot form in his stomach. "What about her?" "She's been asking about you," his mother replied. "She called a few times, but I didn't answer. I didn't think you'd want to talk to her." Liam closed his eyes for a moment, trying to steady his breath. "I don't. I've moved on, Mom. I'm done with her. I don't need any more of her mess in my life." His mother was silent for a moment, then spoke again, this time more cautiously. "She says she's changed, Liam, that she's sorry. But I know it's not easy. I just thought you should know." Liam exhaled slowly, the weight of his mother's words sinking in. He had no desire to hear Venessa's apologies. He had heard them too many times before. The only thing that mattered now was the life he was building for himself, and that life had no room for her. "Thanks, Mom," Liam said, his voice firm, "but I don't want to hear from her. I'm good." After hanging up, Liam felt strangely calm. It was like a door had closed for good, the final nail in the coffin of his past. Venessa wasn't part of his future anymore, and he didn't need her to be. The next evening, Liam met Claire at a local park for a walk. The sky was clear, the stars twinkling above them as they strolled along the path. They talked about everything and nothing: work, travel, their favorite books. But in the quiet moments between their words, Liam found himself thinking more and more about what the future might hold. For the first time in a long while, he felt optimistic. Claire smiled at him as they walked, her hand brushing his briefly. It was a simple touch, but it sent a rush of warmth through him. There was something undeniable about the connection they shared, something that felt genuine and real. As they walked under the stars, Liam realized that the future he had been searching for wasn't some distant idea anymore. It was here with him. And whatever came next, whether it was with Claire or on his own, he was ready. Liam had always believed that life, once you cleared the rubble of your past, could settle into something predictable. It was the kind of quiet peace that he craved, the kind that he thought he had started to carve out for himself after leaving everything behind. But as he stood at the edge of the park, next to Claire, his hand brushing lightly against hers, he felt a shift, a new current that pulled him forward into an unknown future. And it was more exciting than anything he had anticipated. A week after his conversation with his mother, things with Claire seemed to blossom effortlessly. They began to spend more time together, dinner dates, coffee breaks, and even long walks in the park where they would talk for hours. Claire was the kind of person who made him feel alive again. She wasn't like Venessa. There was no drama, no manipulation, just two people enjoying the present, not the weight of the past hanging over them. But, as Liam soon found out, life had a way of throwing curveballs at you when you least expected it. One evening, after a dinner with Claire at a local Italian restaurant, Liam returned home to find his apartment door ajar. It wasn't unusual for him to forget to lock the door, but there was an unsettling feeling in the pit of his stomach as he stepped inside. "Hello," Liam called out, his voice echoing off the walls of the empty apartment. No response. He walked through the hallway, heading toward the living room. That's when he saw it, the familiar, unwanted sight of Venessa standing by his bookshelf, her back to him. She hadn't heard him approach, but the tension in the room was immediate. "Venessa," Liam said, his voice steady but strained. "What the hell are you doing here?" She turned slowly, an uncomfortable smile playing at the corners of her lips. She looked the same: shiny hair, flawless makeup, and a tight dress that was far too bold for the occasion. The only difference now was that there was a tiredness in her eyes, something that hadn't been there when she'd left him months ago. "I needed to talk to you," Venessa said, her voice almost pleading. Liam stood still, his fists clenching at his sides. The anger he had been so carefully managing for months bubbled to the surface. "No," he said firmly. "You don't get to come back into my life. Not after everything." But Venessa wasn't backing down. She stepped toward him, her heels clicking loudly on the hardwood floor, her eyes searching his face for some crack in the armor he had spent so long building. "I made a mistake, Liam, a huge one, and I've been trying to make sense of it. I want us to try again. I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. There it was, the manipulation, the same tactics she had used before. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was sorry she had lost him. And now, she was trying to crawl back in, like nothing had happened. "I'm not doing this," Liam said, his voice cold. "You don't get to come back and act like nothing happened. What you did, it wasn't a mistake, Venessa. It was a choice. You chose to cheat on me, you chose to destroy everything we had. And now, you're standing here asking for forgiveness. No, I won't let you do this to me again." Venessa's face twisted with frustration, her eyes brimming with tears. "You're not even listening to me," she snapped. "I love you, Liam. I've always loved you, but I made some bad decisions. I was lost, and I thought I needed someone else to fill that hole. But I was wrong. I know that now. I need you. Please, just give me another chance." Her words were like poison, dripping with the same false promises that had kept him trapped in the past. Liam didn't respond right away. He was so sick of hearing the same tired excuses. But more than that, he was angry. Angry at himself for ever letting her get this far into his life. "You're still the same Venessa," he said, his voice low. "You've learned nothing. And I'm done. I'm done with you, and I'm done with your lies." Venessa took a step back, her hands trembling as she wiped at her eyes. She looked lost, as if she had been betrayed by something she couldn't control. But Liam wasn't moved. He had heard it all before. "You're wasting your time," he added, his tone final. "I'm not going back to that place. Not for you. Not for anyone." She didn't respond, just stood there, staring at him with a mixture of confusion and anger. Then, in a flash, she turned and stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind her. Liam stood in the doorway for a moment, listening to the sound of her heels fading down the hallway. He exhaled slowly, his body shaking with the release of tension. But it wasn't relief. No, there was still something gnawing at him. Something that had nothing to do with Venessa and everything to do with him. The next few days passed in a blur. Liam kept his distance from everyone, Claire included. He didn't know what had come over him. Maybe it was the anger or the disbelief of Venessa's sudden reappearance. Maybe it was just the weight of everything he had been carrying. But, as much as he tried to ignore it, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One evening, as Liam sat on his couch, scrolling through his phone, he noticed an unfamiliar number had called him several times. He debated whether or not to pick up, but curiosity won over, and he dialed it back. "Hello," Liam answered, his voice guarded. "Hey, Liam," a familiar voice said. But it wasn't Venessa. It was Adam, his old friend from the bar. "Adam," Liam said, his heart skipping a beat. "What's up? I've got something to tell you." "It's about Venessa," Adam said, his tone lower than usual. Liam immediately stiffened. "What about her?" Adam hesitated for a moment, then spoke, his voice filled with unease. "I saw her again, last night, at the bar. She was there with some guy. Not just talking either, man. It was bad. She was all over him. And she told me you two were finished, that you'd never take her back. I just thought you should know." Liam felt his pulse quicken. This wasn't a surprise. Venessa had done this before, but hearing it from Adam, someone he trusted, made it feel more real, more like the final nail in the coffin. "Thanks for telling me," Liam said, his voice thick with disbelief. "But I already know. I told her I'm done. I don't need her in my life anymore." Adam paused again before speaking. "You sure about that? Because if she's playing you, man, you deserve to know. I don't want you to get hurt again." Liam didn't respond at first. He was too busy trying to steady his breath. Adam's words echoed in his mind. This was it. The final betrayal. Venessa had made her choice and he had made his. But this time it wasn't just about walking away. It was about finding the strength to never look back. The days after Adam's call were filled with a strange kind of silence. Liam went through the motions of life. Work, meals, solitary evenings. But everything felt out of sync. He couldn't focus, couldn't shake the images of Venessa with another man. The feeling of betrayal weighed on him, and no amount of self-imposed distraction could get rid of it. The worst part wasn't that she had cheated. It was the finality of it. He had been trying to move on for so long, but now that the truth had been confirmed, it felt like the rug had been pulled out from under him once again. Liam tried to avoid confrontation with Venessa, knowing it would only reopen old wounds. But the more he tried to bury his anger, the stronger it grew. The truth was, he didn't just want to move on. He wanted to make her face the consequences of what she'd done. He wanted to make her understand that what she'd thrown away wasn't just a relationship, but his trust, his future, his peace of mind. By the end of the week, he couldn't hold it in anymore. His phone buzzed with another text from Claire, something about meeting for dinner, but he ignored it. Claire was wonderful, but there was something unfinished inside of him, something that Claire couldn't fix. He needed closure, and the only way to get that was to face Venessa head-on. He texted her, "We need to talk." Within minutes, she responded, "What do you want, Liam?" He gritted his teeth. The coldness in her message only added fuel to the fire. "I want the truth. No more lies." He waited. After what felt like an eternity, her reply came, "Fine." Where? They met at a small cafe, a neutral space, neither of them's first choice but one that would keep things civil, at least on the surface. Venessa showed up wearing a tight red dress that screamed of desperation. Her lips painted a shade too bright, her eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses. As usual, she was trying too hard to look like someone she wasn't. But Liam had long since stopped being fooled by her appearances. "I didn't expect you to actually want to talk," Venessa said, her tone casual, though there was an edge of something else beneath it. Was it guilt? No, it was arrogance. She wasn't here to apologize. She was here to explain why she did what she did. and why she thought she could get away with it. Liam sat across from her, not bothering with pleasantries. He stared her down, his eyes unwavering. "I know what happened last night," he said flatly. "I know about the guy at the bar. I know you were with him when you said you were supposed to be out with your friends." Venessa's face didn't flinch. If anything, she looked more amused than anything else. She leaned back in her chair, a smug smile playing on her lips. "So what? We had a good time. I didn't think you'd care. We're over. Remember?" Liam's chest tightened, but he refused to show any weakness. "That's not the point," he said, his voice steady. "You don't get to do this to me. You don't get to cheat and then act like it's nothing. You don't get to think that I'll just forgive you because you say, 'Sorry.'" Venessa scoffed. "What's the big deal, Liam? You're acting like I did something horrible. I had a little fun. It wasn't even serious." Her eyes flickered around, but Liam could see the unease creeping in, despite her bravado. She wasn't as confident as she pretended to be, but it didn't matter. She'd crossed a line, and now she was going to face the consequences of her actions. "You're not sorry, Venessa," Liam said, his voice low but firm. "You never were. You never cared. And now you're sitting here acting like everything's fine, like we can just forget everything and go back to the way it was. Well, we can't." Her smile faltered for just a moment, before she quickly masked it with a fake laugh. "You don't get it, do you? You were boring, Liam. You were predictable. I needed someone exciting, someone who made me feel alive." Liam's stomach twisted at her words. "And that's your excuse? You don't get to justify destroying a relationship because you wanted excitement." Vanessa's face hardened, and for the first time in this conversation, Liam saw a flicker of something real behind her eyes. Regret? No, it was something darker, something more sinister. "You don't know me anymore," she said coldly. "You think you do, but you don't. I did what I had to do to feel in control. You were always so weak, always so willing to let me walk all over you. You let me do whatever I wanted. And now you want to act all high and mighty." Liam's anger surged. He leaned forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "You want to talk about weakness? You're the one who can't even take responsibility for your own actions. You're the one who couldn't face the consequences of your choices. And now you're sitting here, pretending that I'm the one who failed." Venessa fell silent, her eyes narrowing. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came. It was as if the reality of what Liam had said hit her harder than any accusation he had thrown at her. She wasn't used to being confronted like this. Not by him, not by anyone. She had always been able to manipulate those around her, but Liam had finally stopped being her puppet. The silence stretched out between them, thick and suffocating. For the first time, Liam saw her for what she really was, broken, but too proud to admit it. She wasn't the woman he had fallen in love with. She was a woman who had lost herself in the pursuit of something that could never fill the emptiness inside her. Liam stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I'm done, Venessa. You don't get to keep doing this. You don't get to keep playing with people's lives." Venessa didn't say anything as he turned to leave, but the look in her eyes lingered in his mind. It wasn't the same smugness she usually wore. This time there was fear. Fear that she had finally lost him, and maybe, just maybe, she knew she had lost herself too. The days following his confrontation with Venessa were a blur. Liam had anticipated feeling liberated, like the weight of an anchor had been lifted from his chest. But instead, he was engulfed by a strange emptiness. The house felt too quiet, too big, the spaces they once shared now hollow. He didn't know what to do with himself. The months of uncertainty, of lying awake at night wondering whether he was just too blind to see what was happening, had finally caught up to him. Now that the truth was out, the aftermath didn't feel like victory, felt like loss. At work, he tried to keep his mind occupied. He threw himself into projects, ignored the phone calls from his mother asking about Venessa, and faked a smile when his colleagues inquired about how he was holding up. But it was all an act. Deep down, he was unraveling. It wasn't just the betrayal that gnawed at him. It was the realization that Venessa had never truly been the person he thought she was. He kept replaying the conversation in his head. The way she had so casually dismissed the gravity of what she had done. The way she had twisted his words and blamed him for her own choices. The lies, the coldness. All the things that he had let slide over the years now stood before him in the full light of truth, grotesque and undeniable. That Friday evening, Liam had just finished a long day at work when his phone rang. He was expecting it to be Claire, but the name that flashed on his screen made his heart skip a beat. Venessa. He stared at the screen for a moment, unsure whether to pick up or not. The last time they'd spoken, the air had been thick with resentment, and there hadn't been much left to say. But now, with the truth hanging between them like a sword, he couldn't help the curiosity that gnawed at him. What did she want now? Reluctantly, he answered, "Hello." Liam's voice was stiff. There was a pause, a moment of hesitation, before Vanessa's voice filled the line, sounding not quite like herself. "Liam, we need to talk." He sighed. "About what, Venessa? There's nothing left to talk about. I know you're angry. I know you think I've ruined everything. But I need you to understand something." Her voice was strained, a tremor of uncertainty slipping through the cracks of her usual confidence. Liam leaned against the kitchen counter, his hand gripping the edge as he listened. "Understand what exactly? That you've been lying to me for months? That you've been screwing around with other men and treating me like a fool?" "Stop!" she snapped, her voice rising in frustration. "That's not what I meant. She cut herself off. "I don't know. I made a mistake. I thought I could handle it. But now everything's falling apart, and I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to fix me." The words were almost unrecognizable coming from her. Venessa, the woman who had always carried herself with such poise, was now admitting she was broken. There was an honesty in her voice, but it was too late. She had already shattered everything that had once been between them. Liam remained silent for a moment. His mind was a storm of emotions. Part of him wanted to shout at her, demand answers, unleash all the anger and hurt he had been holding on to. But another part of him, the part he hadn't been in touch with for a long time, felt sympathy for her. This was the woman he had once loved. Despite her flaws, despite the way she had hurt him, he couldn't completely rid himself of the remnants of affection he still felt. "Venessa," he said, his voice cold but controlled. "You had your chance. You had your chance to tell the truth, to be honest, but instead you chose to lie. You chose to destroy everything between us for some thrill you thought you needed." Venessa tried to interrupt, but Liam held up a hand, cutting her off. "No, you don't get to explain this away. You had fun, and now you're regretting it because everything has crumbled around you. But that's your mess to deal with, not mine." There was a long pause, and then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Venessa said, "I still love you, Liam. I never stopped." Liam's chest tightened. He'd heard this before, the desperate promises, the half-baked attempts at redemption. But this time he didn't believe it. He didn't believe her. Not anymore. "I don't care," he said bluntly. "You had your chance. I'm done." He hung up before she could respond, before she could twist his words any further. The decision was final. There was no going back. The next few days were a whirlwind. Venessa didn't call again, but her presence lingered in his life like an unwelcome ghost. Claire had been trying to reach out more, offering support, but Liam hadn't been able to shake off the feeling that she was just a distraction. He wasn't ready to move on. Not yet, but he had to. On Monday morning, Liam arrived at work, still exhausted from the emotional toll of the past week. As he opened the door to his office, a familiar face greeted him with a warm smile. It was Adam, the friend who had warned him about Vanessa's behavior at the nightclub. "Hey, man," Adam said, leaning against the doorframe. "How you holding up?" Liam rubbed his eyes and exhaled deeply. "I don't know, man. I feel like everything's falling apart." Adam stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "I get it. I just wanted to let you know. I've got your back. I know you've been going through hell, and I don't want you to feel alone in this." Liam nodded, grateful for the support. "Thanks, Adam. It means a lot." But as Adam's words sunk in, Liam realized something important. He wasn't alone anymore. He didn't need Venessa. He didn't need her lies, her betrayal, or her empty promises. It was time to start over, to rebuild from the ground up. Liam had made his decision. The phone call with Venessa had been the last straw, the final chapter in a book that had dragged on for far too long. He'd never imagined that he'd be sitting here, in the aftermath of all that had happened, wondering if it was really over. But the truth had sunk in, and now there was no turning back. Venessa was gone, and whatever hope he had once harbored for their relationship had evaporated like mist in the morning sun. The silence in his apartment was deafening. The place that had once felt like home now felt like a tomb, a place filled with memories of things that could never be again. It wasn't just the furniture that felt foreign to him. It was the absence of her. The clutter of her things, the leftover traces of her presence, had faded into emptiness. Venessa had been a ghost, and now she was truly gone. But even as the pain settled in, something else was stirring inside him. It wasn't relief, not yet, but it was something new, a spark of realization that perhaps, just perhaps, he had been holding on for far too long. Maybe he had been afraid to let go, afraid that without her, there would be nothing left. But now, with everything laid bare, the truth was inescapable. He had wasted so much time, so much energy, trying to salvage something that was never meant to be. The first few days after Venessa's departure were a blur of reflection. Liam had spent long hours at home, sorting through the mess she had left behind, cleaning up, sorting through clothes, throwing away things that reminded him of her. At first, it felt like a ritual of mourning. He was grieving, yes, but it was the grieving of something he hadn't even realized was gone. The person he thought she was had never really existed. The woman who betrayed him wasn't the one he had married, but a stranger who had wrapped herself in lies and excuses. But as the days went on, Liam started to reclaim his space. He rearranged the furniture in the living room, hung up a few new pictures on the walls, and even bought a new set of plates and glasses, ones that weren't associated with any of the shared memories of his life with Venessa. The apartment started to feel like his again. And it was only then, when he let go of all the pieces of his old life, that he realized how much he had been holding on to. It wasn't until the following week that Liam finally gave in to Claire's insistence and agreed to meet for dinner. He hadn't seen her much since everything with Venessa had come to a head, but Claire had always been there for him, offering support when he needed it most. She had been patient with him, understanding that he wasn't ready to move forward, but she never once pressured him. And now, he found himself thinking that maybe it was time to let someone else in. Someone who actually cared about him, someone who had never betrayed his trust. The restaurant Claire had chosen was small, cozy, and tucked away from the bustle of the city. The dim lighting, the soft hum of conversation, and the clink of silverware created an intimate atmosphere, one that was exactly what Liam needed. He had grown so used to being alone, but there was something comforting about being in her company. Claire looked as beautiful as ever when he walked in, wearing a simple black dress and a soft smile. She greeted him with a hug that was warmer than anything Venessa had ever given him. For a moment, Liam felt like he could finally breathe again. "How are you holding up?" she asked, after they ordered their drinks. Her concern was genuine, and Liam appreciated it more than he could put into words. "I'm getting there," he replied, his voice a little hoarse. "It's been rough, but I'm trying to figure things out." Claire nodded, her eyes kind and understanding. "You don't have to rush it, Liam. Take all the time you need." For the first time in weeks, Liam felt a genuine sense of peace. It was as though Claire's presence filled the gaps that had been left behind by Venessa's absence. There was no drama, no betrayal, just a quiet, steady connection between them. They spoke about everything and nothing, finding solace in the simplicity of being together. As the night wore on, their conversation shifted to deeper topics: life, the future, love, and the things that made them both tick. Liam found himself opening up more than he had in a long time, telling Claire things he hadn't been able to admit to anyone else. He spoke of his fears, of never finding someone who truly understood him, of doubting his ability to trust again, of wondering if he would ever feel whole. And Claire listened, never once interrupting, just nodding in understanding. "You know," she said after a while, "I think you're going to be okay. I really do. You've got this strength in you that you might not even realize. It might take time, but you'll get there." Liam looked at her, gratitude flooding through him. He didn't know why, but in that moment he believed her. He wasn't sure where this new journey would lead or what the future held, but he was starting to see that maybe, just maybe, he had been too caught up in the past to recognize the possibilities in front of him. By the time dinner came to an end, Liam felt lighter than he had in ages. The weight of Venessa's betrayal still hung over him, but it no longer defined him. The healing had begun, and he was no longer stuck in the same endless cycle of regret and confusion. As they parted ways outside the restaurant, Claire gave him a warm hug, lingering for a moment before pulling away. "Take care of yourself, okay?" she said, her voice soft but firm. "And don't be afraid to take the next step when you're ready." Liam smiled, his heart a little less burdened than it had been when he'd first walked through the door. "Thanks, Claire. I think I'm ready to figure out what comes next." He walked home that night feeling a sense of peace that he hadn't thought possible. He knew it wouldn't be easy. Healing never was. But for the first time in a long time, Liam wasn't afraid to face the future. He had let go of Venessa, and in doing so, he had begun to reclaim his own life. The road ahead was uncertain, but Liam had learned something crucial through all the pain and turmoil. Sometimes, letting go is the only way to make room for something better. And whatever that something was, Liam was ready to find it. The journey of healing wasn't over, but with each step, he was closer to freedom. And maybe, just maybe, to a new beginning.